Welcome all to the CGHS webinar on post-COVID complications and mucormycosis being dealt with individually by none other than people who have been involved in teaching for the last 20 years at the Vardhaman Mahavir Medical College at Safdarjung Hospital and have had first-hand experience in dealing with COVID patients and its complications. Professor Dr. Y.C. Porwal, and we'll be dealing with the post-COVID complications and their management. And Professor Dr. Majhi would be dealing with mucormycosis. Without wasting much time, I would like to hand over the dais to the eminent speakers and over to Dr. Porwal, who's had a lot of academic accolades along with some fellowships to his credit and many more academic feathers in his cap in the field of scientific research. So Dr. Porwal, over to you, sir, for management of post-COVID complications. Dr. Porwal, you have, I think the system needs to be unmuted. As we all know that India is facing this COVID challenge like the rest of the world, and we have just been on the ebbing side of the second wave, which was a much higher, taller wave as compared to the first wave. But collectively, all the response systems and the people of India have collectively, with their cautious attitude and their forbearance, have dealt with it. And,
Good afternoon, Dr. Hemant. Good afternoon, my dear beneficiaries and my dear colleagues and my dear friends. I'm really thankful to the CGHS authorities and the CGHS administration for giving me a chance to say something about the COVID and the post-COVID complications, which has really affected the life of common man. And we have been seeing these patients for last 1.5 years continuously. I would just, before starting, I would like to share my experience on 31st January 2020, when Team India by Ministry of Health and DGCA, Director General Civil Aviation, they have directed us to visit Wuhan in 2 aircraft for the rescue mission to escort around 650 students who were stranded in the city of Wuhan. And they were so much feared that it was really a very difficult task to perform. And I was part of the team as a team leader. The mission was successfully completed within 2 days, except a crash landing at the airport, but nobody was injured. We were very lucky. And at that time, we never thought that this COVID, this virus, coronavirus, will become a pandemic in near future. Within 2 or 3 months, it will become a pandemic. So before dealing with the post COVID complications, I would like to give a brief view of the coronavirus. Actually, this virus basically affects the respiratory system. But now we have seen, initially it was a respiratory tract virus, but now it has affected almost all the major organs, and starting from common cold to pneumonia, and it is basically a zoonotic virus. As far as the history is concerned, they are saying that it has come from bats, but the real origin of the virus still is not known, and it can be transmitted directly or via animals, and it can also transmit between humans to human via the respiratory droplet infections. So the genome of the virus is actually it consists of many parts. Actually, it has a surface part and a endonucleotide part and core part and a surface part. The surface part actually is a membrane protein, and it has also got a spike protein. The spike glycoprotein is the main glycoprotein on which the antibody of the virus is actually made. So the vaccines, they are being made through the spike glycoprotein, and some vaccines are being made on the viral genome also, the total viral genome also. So says the genomic RNA, it's basically RNA virus, and it has a very, very great transmissibility and very highly infectious virus. As the mutation of the virus is changing, the transmissibility of the virus is increasing, as well as the severity of the virus is also increasing. So everybody knows the incubation period of the virus is actually 2 to 14 days, and this and WHO actually has defined this virus as a public health emergency of international concern on 30th January 2020, and declared it was 11th March 2020. Actually, it was declared as a pandemic. So yeah, so this virus has got actually varied manifestations. It has got lot of symptoms, which starts from shortness of breath, high grade fever, vomiting, pneumonia, coughing, and diarrhea. Even sometimes even it can cause abdominal pain and diarrhea. So basically, everybody knows. Just it is a recapitulation that how to prevent the transmission in the community. One has to obey the COVID appropriate behavior. This COVID appropriate behavior is a diligent hand washing, particularly after touching surface in the public, use of hand sanitizer that at least contains 60% of the alcohol, then respiratory hygiene, covering the cough or sneezing, use triple layer disposable surgical mask if you have any respiratory symptom, avoiding crowds, particularly in the poorly ventilated space. It has been seen that the poorly ventilated space, they have more transmission of the virus rather than an open space. And if possible, and avoiding close contact with ill individuals, and try to maintain a safe distance of around 1 meter. Then avoid handshake, hugs, and kisses. These are part of COVID appropriate behavior. Avoid non-essential travels, gatherings, and may use pen for switching on lights or switching off lights in common areas, lift buttons like this. And at hospital, avoid keeping patients' file on the bed. That we usually unknowingly we do. Our residents, they do that, just keep the file on the bed. That it should be avoided. Use gloves, use mask, and arsenal and other personal protective equipment should be considered as a potentially infected material and should be disposed separately in an infectious waste disposal bag. There should be a separate bag for disposing these items, and avoid holding on railings of the steps. These are some basic things which one should. This is just a pictorial picture of this thing. Keep safe distance, wash your hands frequently, cough and sneeze into your elbow, wear a mask, and ventilate or open windows. We should keep our windows actually open as far as possible. Then it is a highly contagious virus. It is mainly attacks the lung, and through the droplets which is created from sneezing and coughing from those infected. And the virus, the main entry of the virus is through the nose, mouth, and eyes. Then the most common reported symptoms are the continuous dry cough, fever, fatigue, weakness, muscle aches, body pain, shortness of breath, sputum production, loss of appetite, taste, and smell. So actually, before defining the severity, we should know how this virus actually behaves in our body. It can cause actually mild symptoms, which around 80%, 85% of the patients, they have mild symptoms. Sometimes the symptoms are so mild that they go undetected, and the patients just recovered from the COVID. And if you do the antibody test, then it comes around positive. That is the basis of sero survey. That at least we can in our community, we can know how much is the infection prevailing in the community. So most of the time it is an uncomplicated upper respiratory infection, which has mild symptoms like fever, cough, sore throat, nasal congestion, malaise, headache, and with or without shortness of breath. So manage these patients are managed at home. Most of the time they are managed at home. Moderate, we have the pneumonia, and there are clinical features of dyspnea, cough, fever, including SpO2 around less than 93% on room air, and respiratory rate more or equal to around 24 per minute. So moderate cases, they need to be managed in the dedicated COVID health center where there is a regular monitoring of these patients, because the patient, it is difficult to monitor these patients in the home actually. And there are severe cases where you get a severe pneumonia, bilateral pneumonia, and the respiratory rate more than 30, where severe respiratory distress and SpO2 less than 90% on room air. And they are managed in dedicated COVID hospitals, which some hospitals they have been designed and dedicated for these cases. Then comes your very severe cases. They are actually acute respiratory distress syndrome (ARDS), where we have where the symptoms actually have worsened within 1 week of the known clinical insult, and the chest imaging actually shows bilateral opacities where the oxygen saturation of the patient is dipping more than less than 90%, or and there is respiratory failure which is not explained by the cardiac failure or fluid overload, or there is one investigation we usually do to exclude heart disease, that is your echocardiography, and oxygen impairment in the adults, that is less than 90%, that is called actually very severe. So most of the patients, they recover within 2 weeks. Their recovery period actually is 2 weeks. But some patients actually, what happens, the recovery takes longer time, around up to 6 weeks. Some patients even recover up to 12 weeks. So according to the time onset and the duration of the symptoms, we actually say that it is a post-acute COVID syndrome, or it is a long COVID syndrome, or it is a long hauler, or these type of cases. So some patients, they have around 10 to 20% of the patients, they recover actually late. So approximately 10 to 15% of the cases, they progress to severe disease. So yes. People, they are not in, actually the infection persists around for around 10 days post symptoms onset, if they have asymptomatic or they are having mild disease. But usually in severe cases, the viral shedding can occur up to 3 weeks. So and if the patients, they are having symptoms more than 4 weeks, then they come under the category of chronic COVID syndrome, or late sequelae of COVID, or long COVID, or long haul. There are so many nomenclatures which have been given: long-term COVID-19, post-COVID syndrome, post-acute COVID-19, post-acute sequelae of SARS corona. These are all basically the same different connotations, but it means the same thing. So there are many reports actually who do not feel actually well after the recovery of COVID, and they come actually under the post-COVID syndrome. There are around 10 to 15% of the patients where the symptoms actually persist more than 12 weeks. So one study has found around 30% of the COVID patients surveyed still have persistent symptoms after 9 months. So in most of the hospitals, we are developing the post-COVID clinics, because the number of patients who are recovering, around more than many crores of patients, they have been recovering. And even if there are 10 or 15% of the patients, they make a huge bulk of the patients. So many good hospitals, and they are making post-COVID clinics. So and few patients who are in the intensive care units, they experience post-intensive care syndrome, which are actually health problems that remain after the critical illness. So actually the definition of post-COVID is the symptoms if persist for more than 12 weeks. So after 3 months, if the patient is having symptoms, then actually it comes under the definition of post-COVID. And the main symptoms of the post-COVID, they are basically chronic fatigue, insomnia. Chronic fatigue is very, very common. Insomnia, stress, depression, breathlessness, loss of weight, and even there are so many neurological symptoms also, like brain fog, like mental impairment. The patient is not able to concentrate clearly. Chest and joint pains, palpitation, myalgia, smell and taste change, cough, headache, gastrointestinal and cardiac abnormalities. Cardiac abnormalities may include even autonomic dysfunction. Sometimes there is tachycardia, or sometimes rarely there can be bradycardia. So there are more serious long-term complications appear to be less common, but they have been the symptoms basically. The symptoms are basically are cardiovascular, where there is inflammation of the heart muscle, respiratory, where there will lung function abnormalities like fibrosis of the lung, or there is sometimes in the acute phase there is sometimes pneumothorax. Then comes dermatological rash, neurological loss of taste, ageusia, and the anosmia, that is a loss of smell, and there is sleep disturbance also. Palpitation, diarrhea, abdominal pain, rash, and recurrent fever. So actually, before this management part, actually it is a holistic approach required for follow-up care, and it is well-being of the for the most post-COVID recovering patient. So the recovery period is likely to be longer for patients who suffered from more severe disease and those with pre-existing illness. Those who are having comorbidities, they recover actually. They take time to recover longer. So older people and people with many older people and people with many serious medical conditions are most likely to experience lingering COVID-19 symptoms. But even young, otherwise sometimes healthy people can feel unwell for weeks or months after infection. Common signs and symptoms which I have already narrated, they are fatigue, weakness, lethargy, shortness of breath, difficulty in breathing, then cough, fever, chill. Cough can be even productive cough or non-productive cough. Then abdominal pain, diarrhea, loss of appetite, and there can be even renal dysfunction. Sometimes there is an acute kidney injury, or sometimes there can be a chronic renal dysfunction also. Then joint pain, chest pain, and muscle pain and headache, they are very common. They are sometimes the patients complain the chest pain, and these chest pain are not to be taken lightly because sometimes they can mimic the anginal pain also. Then here comes loss of memory, or there is a concentration problem, sleep problem, that is called brain fog, fast or pounding heartbeat, chest pain, tightness, loss of smell taste, depression, anxiety, dizziness, tinnitus. There can be sometimes peripheral neuropathy, or the symptoms of acute GB syndrome. There's ascending peripheral neuropathy, pins and needle sensation. There can be skin rash, hair loss, or there can be conjunctivitis, bilateral conjunctivitis, which usually resolves on its own. Conjunctivitis can be COVID during the COVID acute phase or during the recovery phase, both the phases. Then there can be worsened symptoms after physical or mental activities. Then management is basically a multidisciplinary rehabilitation where you have to take the full history, symptom, and clinical assessment of the patient, because the patients are having sometimes comorbidities. So you have to do some basic relevant investigations, like whatever investigations which are relevant to the patient. One should go for those investigations. Then social, financial, and cultural support. Then proper rest, both mental and physical rest. Rest is very important, and self-management and supported self-management. This self-management should be supported by the family members or friends and colleagues. And we should avoid an inappropriate and unnecessary medications, because sometimes these patients, they have been prescribed so many medicines to tide over this crisis, which are usually inappropriate. They are not actually required. And good diet and good sleep and mild exercise. The patient should not go for vigorous exercise. This is very, very important, because many patients who are doing vigorous exercise, they have collapsed during this vigorous exercise. So one should start slow and go slow. Daily practice of yoga and pranayam and meditation is very, very important. It actually improves your breathing exercise. It improves your mentation. It gives you a self confidence. And breathing exercises as advised by the physiotherapist. Then daily morning or evening walk at a comfortable pace as tolerated by the patient. Then balanced nutrition. Nutrition is a very, very important part of this recovery phase. Nutrition and good sleep. These are very, very important part. And easy to digest, freshly cooked, soft diet, and they should have adequate sleep and rest. Then avoidance of smoking and consumption of alcohol. This should be strictly avoided, and take regular medications as advised for COVID and also for managing comorbidities. If the patient is having diabetes, then control of diabetes, hypertension, bronchial asthma, thyroid disorders, or any chronic disease which the patient is suffering from should be managed well. Then self-health monitoring at home, temperature, blood pressure, blood sugar, and pulse oximetry if necessary. If the patient can walk 6 minutes without any distress, then there is no need to check pulse oximetry. Or if there is a persistent dry cough or sore throat, then do saline gargles or take steam inhalation. The addition of herb or spices for gargling or steam, it can be helpful. And we should look for early warning signs also. One should look for high-grade fever. If there is a fever, low-grade fever, one should not worry because it will resolve on its own. But if there is a high-grade fever, then one should think of consulting the doctor. Then breathlessness, and if SpO2 is less than 92% or unexplained chest pain or new onset of confusion or focal weakness, these should be not taken lightly. Then palpitation or chest pain is a very common symptom, and one should have a basic ECG or if required an echocardiography, because heart attacks and myocarditis have been reported. This may increase the risk of heart failure or other heart complications in the future. So rational investigation should be advised. Irrational investigation should be avoided. Then breathlessness and chest pain and pharyngitis is very common. Pneumonia is associated with COVID-19, can cause long-standing damage to the lungs, causes lung fibrosis. And this lung fibrosis, takes very long time to recover. Sometimes some patients, they may require lung transplantation. So 6-minute walk test is important and should be done. There should not be any dip. If the dip is more than 5% of the saturation, then it should be taken seriously. The resulting fibrosis can lead to long-term breathlessness. Then we have been seeing the few patients who are developed post-COVID diabetes. That post-COVID diabetes, either they have a pre-existing diabetes mellitus which has been unmasked, or they are receiving more dexamethasone or more methylprednisolone, which has actually caused the steroid-induced diabetes. And few patients we have seen post-COVID pancreatitis also. Then there is a brain fog. Actually, this brain is involved in so many ways in COVID, and basically there are some insomnias and then seizures and stroke and GB syndrome, which can cause actually temporary paralysis. And there is a long-term complications also, which actually is the cognitive decline, Parkinson's disease, and Alzheimer's disease. My colleague, Dr. Majhi, will be dealing with mucormycosis in detail just after this. Then there is a blood clot and blood vessel problem. We have been seeing so many patients who have developed even gangrene of the peripheral gangrene, heart attacks, strokes. So these are been reported in COVID patients quite frequently. And actually, at this time, who are having these heart attacks, and young patients who are having heart attacks and all, one should go for a COVID testing, RT-PCR. And one myocarditis is also quite common. Then this one is a very important thing I would like to say, that it is a multi-organ system affection of the COVID-19. So this is documented in most, if not part, body system including cardiovascular, pulmonary, renal, dermatology, neurologic, and psychiatry system. So this is called actually multi-inflammatory syndrome of the children and multi-inflammatory syndrome of the adult. Especially we are worried about the multi-inflammatory syndrome of the children, which everybody is worried because of the third wave which we are expecting to come, and they are saying that it will affect more of children. So basically it is an autoimmune condition, and it is a immunological, there is a immune dysfunction which is related with this, and the long multi-organ system effects might last, and whether or not the effect could lead to chronic health problem, this is actually a subject of research actually. So many long-term COVID effects still were unknown, and much is unknown about how COVID will affect people over time, and the research is still going on. Whatever research has been done, we have been able to concise on that, but still there are so many things which have not been revealed in COVID. So many things are coming up day by day, and so many guidelines also changing day by day. So research, they recommend that doctors, they closely monitor people who have COVID-19 to see how their organs they are functioning. So resuming your physical activity, just take a few minutes. So this fitness exercises, just 20 to 30 minutes of fitness exercises 5 days a week, and we should have a very gradual increase of the exercise. Using a walking frame or crutches or a stick, or just choose a route that is relatively flat, and increasing the speed or distance you walk if accessible, include walking uphill in your route. So physical exercise, I have already explained that we should have a gentle exercise into your daily routine, and as you gradually recover, you should increase the exercising capacity. The brain exercise also is very important, like memory exercises, word and games and all these exercises, and these are important. Then comes your isometric exercises, that is the strengthening exercises. It will not make you feel breathless in the same way as fitness. Instead, your muscle will feel like they have worked hard actually. So the recommendation is 3 sets of 10 repetitions of each exercise, and then take a short rest in between. And do not worry if you exercise, if you find these exercises hard. Gradually you will build up the muscle strength. So as in all other hospitals, we have also in Safdarjung, we have started a post-COVID clinic Wednesday 2 p.m. in Safdarjung Hospital, where multi-specialty approach is there. And if the patient wants to attend, they can attend it 2 p.m. on Wednesday. It is important to remember that most people who have COVID-19, they actually recover quickly, and precautions have already been there, and we have to abide by the COVID appropriate behavior. So I think we should stay healthy, stay happy. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any query, we can be able to answer few of the queries. Thank you very much.
डॉक्टर पोरवाल, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया इतने सारे ज्ञानवर्धन के लिए। हमारे श्रोताओं को मुझे उम्मीद है बहुत सारी चीजें समझ में आ गई होंगी कि कोविड से के लक्षण क्या हैं, वो कितने दिन चलता है, उसके बाद होने वाली कुछ चीजों का ध्यान रखना है, जैसे धीरे धीरे अपना व्यायाम बढ़ाना है, एक संतुलित आहार लेना है, रेस्ट करना है, और अपनी जो रेगुलर दवाइयां हैं उनको छोड़ना नहीं है, और एक सकारात्मक माइंडसेट यानी कि एक पॉजिटिव माइंडसेट बना के रखना है, क्योंकि सब लोग ठीक हो ही जाएंगे और होते हैं, और ज्यादातर लोग रिकवर कर जाते हैं बहुत जल्दी। कुछ लोग थोड़ा समय लेके रिकवर करते हैं, परंतु ये सोचना कि नहीं इसमें रिकवरी पॉसिबल नहीं है, बिल्कुल ऐसा कोई बात नहीं है। जैसा कि डॉक्टर पोरवाल ने बताया है, वो तो इतने समय से देख रहे हैं मरीजों को, कोविड के मरीजों को देख रहे हैं, और कुछ ऐसी पेचीदगियां हैं जो आने वाले समय में हो सकती हैं, जिनका अगर हम अभी ध्यान रखेंगे तो वो कॉम्प्लिकेशंस होने का चांस बहुत कम है। शुगर कंट्रोल में रखिए, एंटीबायोटिक्स ज्यादा नहीं खाइए, और अपना हल्का फुल्का व्यायाम शुरू कर दीजिए। बहुत तेज गंभीर यानी कि एग्रेसिव एक्सरसाइजेज नहीं करनी है फॉर द नेक्स्ट 4 to 6 weeks आफ्टर रिकवरिंग फ्रॉम कोविड। और मेरा ख्याल बाकी जो सवाल होंगे उनका जवाब डॉक्टर साहब बाद में दे पाएंगे, क्योंकि अभी हम सुनना चाहेंगे प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर सुधीर माझी को, जो बताएंगे हमें म्यूकरमाइकोसिस के बारे में। प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर सुधीर माझी, would I request him to start his presentation and educate the audience regarding the challenge of mucormycosis. Dr. माझी is a professor of ENT at Safdarjung Hospital and Vardhaman Mahavir Medical College. Over to Dr. माझी.
Thank you, sir. And all the viewers who are just have listened to Dr. Porwal's views, and he has covered the very in detail the COVID symptoms and post-COVID symptoms and how it recovers. I will, as a ENT surgeon, आप लोग सरप्राइज होंगे कि लास्ट वेव में वी हैव नॉट सीन म्यूकोरमाइकोसिस केसेस इन द पोस्ट कोविड पेशेंट्स, बट दिस टाइम सरप्राइजिंगली म्यूकोरमाइकोसिस in layman term it is called black fungus. Everywhere it is in the news, black fungus. So I will brief you in short what is the black fungus, how we have to prevent it, and if what are the symptoms in the post-COVID recovery phase that we have to take care of, and immediately concern the ENT specialist so that we can start the treatment earliest possible way, so that it doesn't become fulminant and cause any death or anything in the post-COVID. I am sir has introduced me already. Nothing to add in this thing. I'm a DNB examiner, post MS examiner, undergraduate examiner. I'm teaching in Safdarjung Hospital since more than a decade. Okay, I will start. Now, coming to the mucormycosis. It is a fungal disease. Mucormycosis is basically a fungus disease of the Rhizopus and Mycor species, which are ubiquitous, present everywhere. In saprophytic organism, not commonly infecting the immunocompromised. So it mostly affects the, I will come in detail, diabetic or immunocompromised patient. Mucormycosis is very common fungal disease. These fungi have a predilection to invade blood vessels, causing infarction and necrosis. And that will cause that black scare sepid, and that is called, in layman term, the Kala fungus. Now coming to the predisposing factors. Here we have the predisposing factors. If we are suffering from diabetic mellitus, and once we have got the COVID also, there is likely chance of we are having in the post-recovery phase this black fungus, mucormycosis. Immunocompromised patients, patients on having AIDS, organ transplant, post-organ transplant patients, and iatrogenic cases also. Hematological malignancies also have hematological malignancy having COVID can lead to mucormycosis. Drugs like corticosteroid, misuse, abuse of drugs like corticosteroid can cause post-COVID mucormycosis. And this time, this mutant virus, the COVID-19 severe infection also cause mucormycosis, because here the severe COVID-19 infection damages the pancreatic cells and insulin resistance develop, and it causes a biological diabetogenic condition also, which can lead to mucormycosis. You can see some symptoms, the swelling around the eye. The course of the disease, fungal spores enters orally and nasal cavity. These are just like COVID, it has two routes, oral and nasal cavity. Invades the sinus rapidly, causing vasculitis and thrombosis, and later on, it forms black scar formation. Already I have told you, most common species are rhizopas. These are not much very. Now coming to the major route of infection, through inhalation, through ingestion, and through traumatic inoculation. These are the three major routes of infection of the mucormycosis. Pathophysiology, I have already told you, it infects the angioinvasion of the blood vessels. It invades the blood vessels, vessels thrombosis, and later on, tissue necrosis is ultimately, and black scar formation. In the second wave, there are 8 or 9 mainly causes of this mucormycosis, sudden increase in mucormycosis cases after the second wave. The first is the COVID-19 disease is known to result in overexpression of ACE2 receptors in the pancreatic islet cells and leads to high insulin resistance in the body, causing biochemically diabetogenic condition. This is the first. The second one is severe disease associated with COVID-19 results in altered iron metabolism, leading to high serum ferritin level, IL-6. In investigation also, we are going for IL-6 also, which measures the high serum ferritin level, is the mediator of cytokinin storm in the severe disease, also promotes ferritin synthesis. This high ferritin level results in the free radical mediated tissue damage and circulatory overload of free iron. Circulatory free iron along with the acidosis becomes an important risk factor for free iron. Circulatory free iron also with the acidosis becomes an important risk factor for mucormycosis in these patients. Disease severity in terms of multi-system failure and ARDS hinders prompt diagnosis by utilizing diagnostic radiology and thus delays treatment. Diabetes, I have already told you, in the severe diabetes cases, there's likely chances of use of steroids, misuse of a steroid is also in the recovery phase. Dexamethasone, at least for 10 days, reduce mortality in the hospitalized patients, but it was also seen that dexamethasone uses were associated with higher likelihood of discharge at 28 days among patients who were receiving oxygen or invasive mechanical ventilation. The other cause of the mucormycosis, at this time, most of the patients require oxygen, and there is a theory that we have not used medical oxygen. Sometimes industrial oxygen has also been given to the patients, and that is not sterile, and that has also causes the chances of mucormycosis, increased chances of mucormycosis. A sudden rise in the cases of COVID-19 cases in India created a near emergency situation, creating panic across the nation. Uses of steroids were misinterpreted, and they were being looked up to as the only life-saving drug. Lack of expert advice, self-medication, and over-the-counter availability in black market lead to the indigenous use of and abuse of this medication. Steroids in excess are known to cause hyperglycemia and insulin resistance. Steroids also exert protein immune suppressive and anti-inflammatory effects. Hence, the overzealous use of steroids during the management of COVID cases paved the way for mucormycosis by enhancing susceptibility of the host for the fungal infection. Sometimes we have to start the steroid on the 6th or 7th day if fever or oxygen level is dipping, or fever is higher or oxygen level is dipping. People have started steroid on the 2nd day or 3rd day. That leads to viremia, and that results in the fatal COVID-19 infections. I know personally some of my friends who have taken steroids, they think that we are in connection with doctors, and I know everything, and they have taken steroid on the 2nd day, the injectable steroid, and ultimately they died because of high dose the viremia. So please use steroid after consulting your doctor, not with a quack or somebody else. The fifth one is medication, self-medication, and over-the-counter availability of the antibiotics combined with incomplete knowledge imparted by social media during these unprecedented times also results in excessive and unethical use of antibiotics in India. Antibiotic overuse is strongly linked with increased incidence of fungal infection because we are controlling the bacteria that leads to fungal infection. If you are suppressing the bacteria, the fungal infection can occur, both invasive and non-invasive. Another important aspect from the medicine point of view is that the sudden expected rise of the this is for medicine. The ability of this drug will depend. Now coming to the environment, the sixth one is the environmental. In India, the environment is also very responsible for cyanopulmonary mucormycosis, which are not very commonly seen, have been seen recently in association with the high temperature in the India. In period between June and August. Unfortunately, we are about to enter the ever mentioned climatic conditions favoring mucormycosis. The seventh one is the overzealous use of boiling water for steam inhalation, repeatedly causing damage to the nasal mucosa and its immunity of the nasal mucosa. So be aware, don't overzealous use of boiling water for steam inhalation should be avoided. Now coming to the in clinical forms, mucormycosis, there are rhinocerebral, pulmonary, gastrointestinal, primary, cutaneous, and disseminated. But we are, as the ENT surgeon, and in this post-COVID area, rhinocerebral type has the highest frequency and mortality in the post-COVID. Clinical features: onset with the nasal stuffiness, epistaxis, and facial pain. Later on, proptosis, chemosis, and ophthalmoplegia. I have shown the photographs also of the various patients. Fever and confusion. Black necrotic scar on the nasal turbinates or palate. It is very, very characteristic. So, nasal endoscopy by a trained ENT surgeon has to be done. And if there is a nasal black necrotic scar on the nasal turbinates or palate, it is very characteristic. Already told you 50% of cases occurs in patients of diabetes, rhinocerebral mucormycosis. Normally, before COVID also, 50% of cases of mucormycosis, rhinocerebral mucormycosis occurs with diabetes mellitus. Usually occurs during an episode of diabetic ketoacidosis with disruption of the host defense mechanism. This is concerned with the medicine also. Now, coming to the rhinocerebral mucormycosis diagnosis. The punch biopsy through the nasal endoscope of the lesion followed by fungal stains and culture. Second one is histological examination reveals the characteristic broad branching hyphae of the rhizopus invading the tissue. CT or MRI of the head reveal air fluid level in the sinuses and involvement of the deep tissues. So these are the diagnostic tools to diagnose rhinocerebral mucormycosis. Now coming to the complication, the death occurs due to these severe complication if we do not manage the rhinocerebral mucormycosis in the earliest stage. So we have to detect it earliest so to avoid complication, to avoid the death, further death of the patient. Cavernous sinus thrombosis, multiple cranial nerve palsies, visual loss, frontal lobe abscesses, carotid artery or jugular vein thrombosis causing hemiplegia. See the photograph of the eye, thymosis around the eyeball. These are the CT. The key points we have to remember. Mucormycosis is not a disease of healthy person. All diabetic patients should have good sugar control. Environmental hygiene, proper maintenance of humidifier. Humidifier is also a patient have been given oxygen without using the humidifier. That has also causes this mucormycosis in the post-COVID era. Daily cleaning of the oxygen mask and the tubes. reuse of mask should be avoided. Irrational use of steroids should be avoided. Antibiotic overuse should be avoided. And this is our Directorate General of Health Services, Government of India has given the managing guidelines. I have already explained you what is mucormycosis, the time of presentation. I've already uncontrolled hyperglycemia due to any reason, misuse of over steroids, prolonged ICU stay, unhygienic humidifiers, and irrational use of broad spectrum antibiotics may also be associated with mucormycosis. Pre-existing comorbidities such as hematological malignancies, use of immunosuppressants, and organ transplant. Sign and symptoms, I have already told you: facial pain, pain over the sinuses, pain in the teeth and gums. Also, mind it, pain in the teeth and gums, paresthesia or decreased sensation over the half of the face, blackish discoloration of the skin over the nasolabial groove or ala nasi, nasal crusting and nasal discharge, which could be blackish or blood stained, periorbital swelling, blurring of the vision or diplopia, loosening of the teeth is also important symptom. Discoloration of the palate. This is very, very important. Discoloration of the palate, hard palate, turbinates, insensitive to touch, scar over the palate. Worsening of the respiratory symptom, hemoptysis and chest pain, headache, alteration of consciousness, and seizures, etc. Diagnosis I have already told you. Management, one should have a high index of suspicion of invasive fungal infection, such as mucormycosis, in the presence of predisposing conditions. I have already told you. Liposomal amphotericin B in initial doses of 5 milligram per kg body weight up to 10 milligram per kg body weight in cases of CNS involvement is the treatment of choice. It should be diluted in 5% dextrose. And after starting this medicine, after 2 or 3 days, we as a ENT surgeon go for endoscopic debridement of the dead tissues from the sinuses, and we remove out the and please mind it, if we are not starting the liposomal amphotericin B and we go straightly to the debridement of the sinuses, the dead tissue, it will lead to further spread of the fungus. It will lead to further, because we are opening the channel. It will go to brain. If it has not gone to brain or orbit, it will definitely go to. So definitely we have to start the liposomal amphotericin B along with the surgical debridement of the endoscopic surgical debridement of the nasal mask, and should be diluted in it is electrolyte is recommended. It has to be continued till a favorable response is achieved and disease is stabilized, which may take 3 to 6 weeks, following which step down to oral pisiconazole 300 mg delayed release tablet twice a day for 1 day, followed by 300 mg daily, or isogonal 200 mg 1 tablet 3 times a daily for 2 days, followed by 200 mg daily. Shall have to be taken for prolonged period as per the advice of the ENT surgeon or physician. The therapy has to be continued until the clinical resolution of the sign and symptom of the infection, as well as resolution of the radiological signs of active disease and elimination of the predisposing risk factors such as hyperglycemia, immunosuppression, etc. It may have to be given for quite long period of time. Conventional amphotericin B deoxyfolate in the dose of 1 to 1.5 milligram per gram may be used if liposomal form is not available. Kidney function must be monitored during the entire management because it excretes through kidney. All these I have already explained to you. This is the All India Institute of their treatment organization guidance. The same thing as in the Ministry of Health has given the. These are the very, very important things for mucormycosis. Although COVID is declining, but mucormycosis is increasing. So be aware. And I am, as a ENT surgeon, I am advising you, those who have recovered from severe COVID, or having diabetes, or have taken steroid, or have taken oxygen, must start salt spray. It's a normal saline nasal spray. Do 2 or 3 times a day. Wash the nasal cavity, both the sides, for at least for 15 or 20 days. Nothing harm in this. It's a normal saline solution. So if there will be any accumulation, it will get out from the nasal cavity. So I'm very thankful to CGHS AD sir, who have given me the opportunity, and myself and Dr. Podwal to give a sincere representation of COVID and mucormycosis. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Professor Maji. जैसा कि हम सब ने सुना, सारे श्रोताओं का मैं ध्यान आकर्षित करना चाहूंगा कि कुछ एक बिंदु हैं जिन पे हम लोगों को ध्यान देना है कि ये बीमारी स्वस्थ लोगों की नहीं है। जिन परिस्थितियों में आपके संक्रमण की प्रति कमजोर पड़ चुकी है, जैसे मधुमेह हो या और किसी वायरल संक्रमण हो जैसे HIV है, या और किसी ऐसी बीमारी के चलते आप अपनी ऐसी कोई दवाइयां खा रहे हैं जिससे कि आपकी प्रतिरोधक क्षमता यानी कि इम्यूनिटी को सप्रेस किया जा रहा हो, तो उन लोगों में ये बीमारी ज्यादा होती है। ये बीमारी के लक्षण डॉक्टर साहब ने बताए हैं, वो उनको ध्यान में रखना है। और ये बीमारी जरूरी नहीं है कि सबको होगी ही ना, बिल्कुल ऐसा कतई नहीं है। ऐसा इस वक्तव्य का बिल्कुल उद्देश्य नहीं है, ना ही इसमें ऐसा कुछ कहा गया है। इसलिए ये कहना कि ये बीमारी सबको है, इससे भयभीत होने की बात नहीं, इससे केवल सचेत रहने की आवश्यकता है। और सचेत भी इस हद तक कि वो घबराहट ना बन जाए। तो आप लोग अगर आपकी शुगर कंट्रोल में है, आपको कोई ऐसी बीमारी नहीं है जिससे कि आपकी इम्यूनिटी को सप्रेस किया जा रहा है, या कोई ऐसी दवा नहीं खा रहे हैं जिससे इम्यूनिटी सप्रेस है, तो आपको और आप नॉर्मल साफ सुथरे वातावरण में रह रहे हैं, तो आपको घबराने की, चिंतित, अनयूजुअली एंग्शियस होने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है ना प्रोफेसर माजी? ठीक है ना बात?
यस सर, बिल्कुल सर, घबराने की कोई बात नहीं है। जिनको सीवियर हुआ है या ऑक्सीजन की जरूरत हुई है या स्टेरॉइड हुआ है या डायबिटीज,
उनमें थोड़ा सा उनको सचेत रहने की, दे हैव टू बी कॉशियस ऑफ दीज सिम्टम्स दैट हैव बीन मेंशन्ड and report it directly to as soon as possible to the nearest possible doctor. They will decide whether an ENT consultation would be required or not, because let us not pressurize the system which is already pressurized because of the various diseases, especially COVID around. Secondly, अगर आप लोग ठीक हो चुके हैं तो दूसरों के बहकावे में सोशल मीडिया में बहुत सारे ऐसे मैसेजेस चल रहे हैं कि ये हो सकता है, वो हो सकता है, तो इन सब चीजों के निराधार मैसेजेस के ऊपर अपना ध्यान केंद्रित ना करें। एक सकारात्मक सोच रखें और फैक्ट्स के बेसिस पे अपने आप को, अपनी जीवन शैली को सुधारें। अगर आपकी थोड़ी बहुत, जैसे डॉक्टर पोरवाल ने कहा कि हल्की फुल्की एक्सरसाइज बहुत जरूरी होती है, एकदम एक्सप्लोसिव एक्सरसाइज 4-6 हफ्ते में नहीं करनी है पहले, परंतु थोड़ा साफ सुथरा रहें, संतुलित आहार लें, नियमित रूप से सोएं, अपनी रेगुलर दवाइयां लें, साफ सफाई का ध्यान रखें, तो निश्चित रूप से जीवन का यापन जो है बहुत आसान और सुखद रहेगा। बाकी अगर किसी को अपनी बीमारी के चलते या कुछ परिस्थितियों के चलते ये बीमारी हो भी गई, तो इसका उपचार है, प्रोवाइडेड आप इसको उचित समय पे डॉक्टर की सलाह के अनुसार उचित दवाई स्टार्ट कर लें। घबराएं ना, कोई भी ये बीमारी नहीं कि एकदम इसका इलाज संभव ही नहीं है, नहीं संभव है, परंतु विलंब ना करें, देरी ना करें, और एकदम से घबराहट में भी आके कुछ ऐसा कदम ना उठाएं कि जो आपके लिए ही नुकसानदेह हो। जैसे क्योंकि किसी भी तरह के स्ट्रेस से शुगर और बढ़ जाती है, चाहे वो मानसिक स्ट्रेस हो चाहे वो बायोलॉजिकल स्ट्रेस हो, the sugars will rise again. And post-COVID, as Professor Maji said, that it increases the chances of high sugars. यानी कि कोविड बीमारी में कुछ ऐसी परिस्थितियां पैदा होती हैं जिसमें शुगर बढ़ने का चांस बढ़ा रहता है। तो उसके बाद, कोविड से रिकवरी के बाद, मेरे विचार में अगर आप लोग अपना कार्बोहाइड्रेट कंजम्पशन थोड़ा नियमित या संतुलित रखेंगे तो वो बेहतर रहेगा। और एक हल्की फुल्की व्यायाम का अपने जीवन शैली में एक रूटीन में लाना रखेंगे तो बहुत अच्छा फायदा मिलेगा, और ये समय जो है बहुत आसानी से कट जाएगा बिना किसी नुकसान के। Is there anything else, प्रोफेसर माझी एंड प्रोफेसर पोरवाल, वुड यू लाइक टू ऐड समथिंग एल्स? क्या आप कुछ और इसमें टिप्पणी करना चाहेंगे? क्योंकि बहुत सारे सवाल प्रश्न आ रहे हैं चैट बॉक्स में जो कि वैक्सीन संबंधित हैं, दे आर रिलेटेड टू द वैक्सीन्स। So I would like to take the collectively take the. I cannot individually take the questions because there are so many of them. So collectively, I would like to put to the panelists, our eminent speakers, questions that people want to ask: that when can they take vaccine after recovering from COVID? The 4 to 6 weeks, or the 6 to 12 weeks, or the 8 weeks, or what is the correct
The
time frame,
government-
and when is this time to be started from the date of diagnosis or from the date of recovery?
After the date of diagnosis, after the first onset of symptom, the Government of India guideline is after 6 months. You wait for 6 months and then take the vaccine.
This is
There
for
are so many. Yes, sir. There are so many queries regarding the mucormycosis, whether it is a contagious disease or not. No, it is not a contagious disease. It is not a contagious disease. Don't be panic. You will.
बहुत ही very important and valid point. I would like to stress to the audience that unlike COVID, which is definitely communicable, mucormycosis is not communicable, isn't it, Dr. Maji? Is that what
Yes,
you want to?
Yes.
जिस तरह से कोविड बीमारी, वैसे ही म्यूकरमाइकोसिस नहीं फैलता। म्यूकरमाइकोसिस एक से दूसरे को फैलने के इसमें क्षमता नहीं है। जब तक आपकी संक्रमण गतिरोधात्मक क्षमता बरकरार है, आपकी इम्यूनिटी स्ट्रांग है, आपको किसी दूसरे के संपर्क में आने से म्यूकरमाइकोसिस के चांस नहीं है। यही बोलना चाह रहे थे ना प्रोफेसर माझी?
Yes, sir. Yes.
और जैसा डॉक्टर पोरवाल ने बताया कि डायग्नोसिस के 6 महीने के बाद ही वैक्सीन लेना है। दूसरी बात यह कि एक वैक्सीन तो क्या, इज देयर एनी लेवल ऑफ antibodies that people are chasing that is protective?
No, that has not been defined. The neutralizing antibodies, actually, it is not recommended to do neutralizing antibody. That has not been recommended by Government of India, and one should not go for that.
तो जैसा कि आपने जाना कि इम्यूनो एंटीबॉडीज का स्तर जांचने के लिए कोई ऐसा अभी हमारे पास एविडेंस नहीं है कि हम कुछ बोल सकें कि हाँ ये स्तर अच्छा संरक्षण प्रदान करता है, ये स्तर संरक्षण प्रदान करने में सक्षम नहीं है। ऐसा कोई भी एविडेंस, ऐसा कोई भी अभी हमारे पास तथ्य नहीं है जिसकी बेसिस पे हम ये बोल सकें या सुझा सकें कि ये स्तर अच्छा सेफ है, ये स्तर बुरा है। तो डॉक्टर पोरवाल, प्रोफेसर पोरवाल का सुझाव है कि ये सरकार का भी मानना है, शायद एक्सपर्ट्स का, कि इसके पीछे व्यर्थ ना लगा जाए। इन्वेसिव एस्परजिलोसिस क्या होता है प्रोफेसर माझी, लोग जानना चाहते हैं।
It is also a fungal disease, aspergillosis, but it is not so severe like mucormycosis. In aspergillosis, go with the itraconazole candidate type of drug and pisoconazole also, but it is not so serious like mucormycosis. It's also a fungal disease.
ऐसा कई बार देखा गया है कि लोग अपनी उत्सुकता में ये पूछते हैं कि क्या हम कोई प्रिवेंटिव दवाई खा लें म्यूकरमाइकोसिस रोकने के लिए। तो इसके बारे में प्रोफेसर माझी आपकी क्या टिप्पणी है?
नहीं सर, ऐसा कोई प्रिवेंटिव मेडिसिन नहीं है। आपको प्रिवेंटिव, मैंने वही बोला, सॉल्ट स्प्रे, नॉर्मल सलाइन का नेजल स्प्रे है। अगर आप सीवियर कोविड से, आप डायबिटीज थे, ऑक्सीजन ह्यूमिडिफायर ऑक्सीजन पे थे, स्टेरॉइड पे थे, एंटीबायोटिक पे थे, तो आप प्रिवेंटिव नेजल स्प्रे, सॉल्ट स्प्रे, जो कि नॉर्मल सलाइन स्प्रे है, आप उसको दिन में 3-4 बार 2-2 पफ वो कर सकते हैं, जिससे सेक्रेशन मतलब जो फंगल स्पोर्स हैं वो वहां पे जमा ना हो। और वैसा कोई मेडिसिन तो नहीं है, बस आपको ब्लड शुगर कंट्रोल करना है, ये सब तो मतलब आपको वही प्रिवेंट करेगी, न कि कोई ऐसा स्पेसिफिक दवाई नहीं है जिससे हम म्यूकोरमाइकोसिस को प्रिवेंटिव खाके, वो आपको शुगर कंट्रोल करना है, अपना जो चीजें आपको डिसरप्ट हुई है, आपकी जो इम्यूनो सप्रेशन हुआ है, उसको करेक्ट करना है।
देखिए, I would like to thank the eminent speakers and the audience for being there and for such a wonderful and educational discourse on such relevant topics. The disease is only about a year and a half old, and the scientific community knows it better than what it knew it last year. And I am sure with passage of time, we will perhaps know it better. And many more scientific evidence will be available to address a lot of things that we still have no clue about today. तो समय ही बताएगा कि आने वाला समय कैसा होगा, पर दिख तो रहा है उज्जवल, क्योंकि वैक्सीन भी है हमारे पास, इस बीमारी को समझने की ज्यादा अनुभव भी हो गया है, इस चैलेंज से, चुनौती से जूझने का हमारे पास अनुभव भी है, शिक्षा साधन भी है, संसाधन भी है, और बहुत सारे लोग ऑलरेडी वैक्सीनेट हो चुके हैं। तो मैं ये बताना चाहूंगा कि इसी सकारात्मक सोच पे हम अपने सारे श्रोताओं को और वक्ताओं को सबको धन्यवाद प्रकट करते हुए आप सबसे वाणी को विराम देते हैं और सबसे फिर मिलने की उम्मीद करते हैं। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू।
नेक्स्ट था मैम।
हम लोग इसको कैसे वो कर सकेंगे, हम लोग कैसे इसको एड्रेस कर सकेंगे? पूरा मिल जाएगा, आज ही मिल जाएगा,
देंगे मेरे ख्याल वीक आफ्टर 1 वीक या
गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया गाइडलाइन।